Hi, I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology, and this video is called Magical Stop Sign Talisman and the Causality of Astrology and Magic. So, as I said, we're going to delve into this causality of astrology and magic. I want to start off by talking about basically, again, we're going to be talking about different models or maps. Okay? A map works from a particular perspective for a particular purpose and can be assessed empirically. Okay? So, we're not talking about objective truth. We're not talking about the idea that there's just one right answer. What we're saying is, look, there's different approaches, different models, but not all these models are equal, or equally useful. So basically, we're trying to do an intermediate between the extremes of there's only one right answer, only one objective truth, the truth for all reality, for all time, and it's mine, or everything's true. This is a sort of middle path. So I mean, talking about maps, talking about models. Let's just again give an example. So this is a DC Metro map. Okay, so you want to get on a subway in DC, and let's say you want to go from Federal Triangle, okay, and you want to go to Silver Spring. So what you do is you get on. It's probably the orange line. It's probably the easiest. Go to Metro Center. Change it Metro Center to the red line, and then you go up to. You want to go to Silver Spring. You go up to Silver Spring. Okay, so that would be, if you want to go from the Federal Triangle subway stop to Metro to Silver Spring Metro stop, this is a great map for doing that. If you want to go outside and walk, or drive, this is going to be a terrible map for that. It's not going to give you. You're going to have a. I mean, you can give a general idea of it, but it's not going to be able to get you there effectively at all. So this is a good map or a bad map. It's certainly a good map for the purpose of going on the subway. But in terms of trying to get there from another way, it's not a good map. Okay, so that's what I think we need to evaluate as we're looking at these models here. Again, this is the best map in the world. It's like, well, what are you using it for? What purposes? And again, this is just DC Metro. Okay, it's not going to help you if you're going to get on the tube in London. So it's not going to help you, in Iowa City to go downtown. So again, keep that in mind as we're going through this. So what I'm going to do is lay out some different models. We're going to talk about these models. But I think the key with them is that this is not just a theoretical discussion. This is not a discussion about what I think or whatever, just subjectively. We can test this stuff, like I said, and you can test whether it's a good map or not for the subway by going out and seeing whether it gets you from point A to point B on the subway. So we can do that as well with astrology and magic. But again, it's not going to do us any good in terms of being objective truth for all times. The fact that it works for you for a particular circumstance or doesn't work doesn't say anything necessarily about the quote objective truth about it. And my tendency, my personal view, as I tend to doubt the existence of objective reality, I think that there's a lot of subjective realities. That the idea that we could somehow grasp and know the complete reality, I think, is not possible. But then again, that's an opinion of mine. So let's just jump into talking about causality of astrology and magic. Like I said, we're going to be looking at different models. So astrology, I think the standard approach, the first thing with astrology and for moderns is a lot of modern astrologers basically sidestep the idea of causality. So, and that's what synchronicity, people say, first of all, I don't care how it works. I just know it works. The other more sophisticated way to do that is to talk about synchronicity. Now, synchronicity is, Jung came up with that. He says an acausal connecting principle. In other words, a black box. In other words, we just don't know. So it's basically saying, I have no idea, and I don't care. The problem with this is that how something works or how your view of how it works has a very strong influence on your approach and your practice. So instead of saying, I don't care how it works, what that's doing is basically saying, well, I have some unconscious assumptions about it, and I'm not even aware of those assumptions. Or I just, like a child, boom, you turn on the TV and magical stuff appears, and you turn it off and it disappears. I have no idea how it's going on. I think that's probably not a stance that most of us want to take. I think for me, I want to know, at least have a model for what's going on here. So the standard modern approach for astrology and magic, but particularly for astrology, is quote energy. So there are a significant number of people that think that scientifically describable energy like magnetism or gravity or string theory or whatever is the explanation of astrology, and they're really bewildered by this idea. Why isn't this scientifically accepted? Obviously it must be, when in fact there's no scientific evidence for the causality of astrology. So the scientists, the conclusion they would draw from that is that Astrology is simply foolish superstition. If there's no scientific evidence for it, it's not true. Okay? And the whole, you think about transubstantiation and all that, it's like you're allowed to believe in it. And when you say you believe in something, it means, it's ridiculous scientifically, but you're giving you a pass. No one's going to call you on that and say how ridiculous it is. Because again, if you think about it, you can say, well, you believe in God. Well, that's because God doesn't really exist. I believe in Santa Claus because Santa Claus doesn't really exist. But you don't say, I believe in atoms, because obviously atoms exist. I haven't seen any. I've never experienced them, but, the scientists, they showed them, and so I accept them. And that's what I would say. People say, do you believe in magic? I'm like, no, I accept the existence of it. I've seen it in operation, and that's a model that makes sense to me, just like a scientific model makes sense to a scientist or most people these days. So the more sophisticated esoteric understanding of the energy was that, this is a kind of energy that's not detectable by science, but otherwise it's basically the same thing. It's impersonal force, rays, beams, whatever, fields, something like that, sparks. That's, sparks, energy, light, laser, pew, 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 that's energy. So then if you think about that, it's like the natal chart, for example, is a chart of energy beams. Okay, it's kind of the angles of things. The planets are sort of beaming out some kind of energy, and they were at a particular angle when you were born, and that explains what's going on. So if there's a transit, what's happening is that Saturn's transiting your second house. That means Saturn is beaming energy at you. Now the problem with that is that the transit is basically just a ratio. Okay, you're taking the chart at the time of your birth, and then you're looking at the current chart. So that placement has nothing to do with the actual physical placement of Saturn at the moment in relationship to your natal chart. Okay, they're superimposing them. It's sort of like if you think about the nodes, the moon's nodes. These are the intersection of the orbit of the moon with the orbit of with the ecliptic, the orbit of the sun. There's no physical object there. It's just a ratio. Okay, but it's very useful. It's very, very helpful. But if you're saying if it's all physically based, if it's energetic based, then why are you using nodes? So again, this whole energy stuff really, and then again, this whole sidereal versus tropical zodiac stuff, that's all based on an energy understanding or a physical understanding of the causality. And if you think about that, it's with talismans, again, the energy approach. I mean, a talisman for most people is a physical object. It's a dead object. You can throw it away or transfer it or do whatever you want with it. It's no problem. It's like an iPad or a battery or whatever. So like I said, you charge it up as a battery with some kind of energy. It wears out. You got to recharge it. And if you have problems with the talisman, it's problems with the magic. Okay? So, I had someone once ask me, it's like, well, is it a problem to have a radio next to my altar because that might mess it up? It's like, no, this is not the kind of energy we're dealing with talismans. And also not, again, my approach. But I mean, again, it's not wrong. This is just a particular approach that people take. But again, once you take that approach, then you're sort of locked into this sort of way of thinking about it, and it determines your opinion. Because people think, I'm coming with my own opinions. It's like, no, your opinions are determined by that. Just like me, I'm the same way. It's like, it's not like I'm coming with something unique. All I'm doing is reflecting these underlying models or worldviews or whatever. So, when we talk about magic, I think that magicians are much more open to causality by spirits. I mean, there's this whole chaos magic stuff, which is all in your mind anyway, so you're doing it. So it's a psychology, and the psychology is your mind, and your mind is basically just the brain, and the brain is a physical object, and it's electrochemical processes. So, there's that's a classic explanation of magic, or any kind of stuff of anything spiritual it's just psychological, and psychological is just matter. But, again, even if you have spirits, they tend to be using energy like Harry Potter. They're zapping each other with stuff. There's a zap. So really what you're talking about energy is a sort of physicalized matter, physicalized, the whole view of it is. So, for example, photons are light, electrons are little bits. That's how we're thinking about it. This is our model for it, And the quantum physics, it's so crazy, quantum physics. That's not how people think about reality. Okay, the quantum mechanics stuff, and the ultimate thing about quantum mechanics stuff is it's all impersonal. There's no individual spiritual beings doing stuff. But ultimately what you're getting with energy is a lot of sort of of pushing, of zapping, of touching. You've got this sort of myriad of separate things, even if they are spiritual beings. So let me just give another alternative model. And like I said, this is I'm not making an argument here. Okay, this is because I talked about this before. I said unified consciousness of Buddhism is a possible model for magic, and someone said, oh well, some academic has they've definitively exposed that it's not true. Like I said, I'm not in an argument. I'm not doing a PhD dissertation here. What I'm doing is I'm pointing. Okay, and if you see what I'm pointing at, and that resonates for you, great. If you don't see what I'm pointing at or it doesn't resonate for you, that's fine too. Okay, it's not ultimate truth. It's again, this is a modeling. Okay, if it's a useful model for you, great. If it's not, but I think it's interesting to think about this. And in order to point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do well, let me just give an example. So I'm going to give an example of a very powerful magical talisman. And I mean, think about this. Super powerful magical sigil. I mean, every day it's causing millions of people to stop, right? I mean, you don't need to have a physical barrier. All you need to have is have this sign up there and boom, people are going to stop. Now, yeah, sure, people ignore it. But if they ignore it, oh, the police look, you can get a fine, you can get this, camera will take a picture of you get a thing in the mail saying, all the stops, ran the stop sign. If you don't, you cause danger. I mean, but the immediate reaction to that is say, oh, that's just a sign. This is reductionist, deconstructivist thinking. Okay, so first of all, it's nothing but, right? That's just a stop sign, and everyone knows what a stop. So we're used to it. So obviously it can't be magical because we're used to it. And then deconstructivism. So this is a modern atheistic, materialistic view. Okay, deconstructivism. It's like essentially the view is that all this stuff is just made up. Okay, some human consciousness, which itself is again, just material because the brain's just a physical object, at some point thought this up, and everyone decided to agree with it. And if we wanted to, we could just change it, right? It's just conventional. It's like there's nothing to this. It's not like this is something that's like discovered or anything like that. This is just made up, and we can just change it at any point. So interesting thing about that, in the movie Last Emperor, which traces the life of the last emperor of China up until from I think the 20s up until the 60s or 70s when he died. The opening scene of this movie is sort of the end of his life, and it's in Beijing, and it's at the height of the Cultural Revolution, and everyone's sitting there on their bikes waiting at the stoplight, and the stoplight turns red. Well, of course it was red because to go. Now, it had to be red to go because this Cultural Revolution, they're very literal. Red was their big color, redder than the Red Rising Sun Chairman Mao. Red is good. Red is the color of revolution. So red could never be stop. Red had to be go. Okay? So what's interesting about that is that, so clearly they're like, oh, we're going to change this. We're going to change those stop signs. It can't be green go anymore. It has to be red go. So I was looking I did some research for this because I used this point before, and I looked at China, and as far as I can tell, in China today, green is go. Okay, so the green go is way too heavily embedded in consciousness. Okay, and we really have to question whether it was invented by humans or manifested. Okay, and even that does it really matter at any point? It's so heavily, like I said, embedded in there. Now, your approach to that is really going to what your worldview is. Okay, and so to be like saying, oh no, I made a choice. It's like humans, this whole human exceptionalism. Humans are the height of evolution and we're a free choice to do all this stuff. When the reality is that we're embedded in this culture, the society that is really not of our choice. That's not bad, unless you're coming from this sort of ego standpoint. So what I would posit as a mechanism of magic, is certainly one of the mechanisms of magic, is the fact that universal consciousness reacts in a particular way, in a particular manifestation, and it reacts to images, to sounds, to symbols, to ritual. So I was just looking at Iamblichus, and he's the theurgist, and this is, I think, resonant with the view that Iamblichus puts forward as far as ritual. Don't change the barbarous names. Do the ritual as provided, and if you do the ritual, then you have the reaction of consciousness to it. So again, you just think about it. The automatic reaction there is to stop. Okay. I mean, this is like not even any thought. It's like, and there's really a magical quality to that. And it also puts me in mind of the Quran. And it's in Surah 2, verse 117, it says, He is the one who has originated the heavens and the earth. And when he wills a thing, he only says to it, be, and it becomes. So be, and it is. Okay, and this is how consciousness works. You know, there's not a bunch of separate objects. There doesn't need to be an interaction between the two of them. There doesn't have to be some pushing or touching or zapping or pew 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 or whatever to happen. It's like it simply is be, and it is. You know, that in approaching that consciousness with a particular symbol automatically causes the reaction. And so that's, you know, what I would say about magic. And the one final thing I would say too is that magicians, the focus tends to be on will. It tends to be on the cause. Now I will something and I cause a change. What I recognize with astrological magic that I do is that I continually cannot tell whether I'm causing it or announcing it. And so that also that my consciousness was impelled to do the ritual because I'm in tune, I'm in resonant with the moment, with the astrological moment, or with that consciousness that had manifested itself. So think about that. Like I said, this is a pointing. This is not an argument. Okay? If you can see what I'm pointing at, if you can see that underlying reality that I'm describing, and that's useful to you as a model, wonderful. If you're like, no, that doesn't make sense to me, I don't like it, that's perfectly fine too. It doesn't make my view wrong. It certainly doesn't make your view wrong either. It's just different models, different approaches. And I think the suppleness of thinking about this is very freeing. I think it's very important also to recognize our own models and our own, ultimately our own worldview, which again determines things. So for me, I'm no exception whatsoever. I mean, I'm simply just a reflection or manifestation of the worldview that has me in its grasp. So again, hope you find that helpful and useful, and I hope you'll delve more into this underlying causality and nature of magic and models of causality.